Hey everyone, and welcome. If you're tackling the GRI professional certification, you already know it can be a real beast. Today, we're going to break down why so many people find it so tough, and more importantly, we're going to reveal the one crucial mindset shift that separates the people who pass from the ones who don't. Ready? Let's dive in.
So, let's just get right to the heart of it, shall we? Why is this exam so difficult? Well, a lot of very smart people walk in thinking it's just a memory test. And right there, that is the single biggest mistake you can possibly make. The real reason it's so challenging is actually a lot more interesting.
And this quote from our source material absolutely nails it. See, the exam isn't designed to check if you can recite the standards word for word. It's built to test something much more important: whether you can think and act like a real sustainability professional who's facing messy, complex, real-world situations.
And the reason for this is pretty simple. The entire game has changed. Sustainability reporting isn't some fluffy, feel-good exercise anymore. Not at all. It's now right at the center of investor demands, new regulations, supply chain scrutiny, and, of course, huge reputational risk. The exam had to evolve to keep up with that new reality.
This brings us to what is probably the most critical takeaway for you today. To really succeed, you need a fundamental shift in your mindset. It's all about moving from that simple rote recall towards developing genuine professional judgment.
And this slide just lays it out perfectly. I mean, look at the two paths here. On the left, you've got that rote recall path, just memorizing, quoting, ticking boxes. Honestly, that's a dead end. But over on the right, you have the professional judgment path. This is all about interpreting, justifying, and defending your decisions. That's exactly where you need to be.
Think of it like this. You're not being asked to memorize an entire law book. That's not the goal. You're being trained to be the lawyer in the courtroom, the one who takes those laws and applies them to a complicated, messy, real-world case, and then has to stand up and defend that argument.
This quote really drives that point home. I want you to let this completely reframe how you study. You aren't just reading a manual. You are training to make decisions, and not just any decisions, but decisions that you can stand by and defend. That is such a powerful way to approach this.
Okay, so we've got the mindset down. Now, how do we actually apply it? Well, it all starts with understanding the single most important concept in the entire GRI framework, and that is materiality.
In the GRI universe, materiality is basically the engine that drives everything else. It's the process you use to figure out which topics are significant enough that you have to report on them. And the key word here is that this decision has to be based on rigorous justification, not just on what's convenient or what's easy to report.
The exam absolutely expects you to be able to trace these impact pathways. It's a really logical process. First, you identify what the company actually does. Then, you trace the real-world impacts of those activities. Third, you assess if those impacts are significant. That's your materiality assessment. And finally, and this is so important, you justify what you're reporting, and just as critically, what you're not reporting.
All right, understanding that logic is half the battle. The other half is applying it to all the tricky scenarios the exam just loves to throw at you. So let's dive into some of the most common traps you're likely to see.
You are going to see these three areas pop up again and again. First, impacts that happen way up or way down your value chain. Second, defining your reporting boundaries, which often go way beyond just legal ownership. And third, knowing how to handle data that's incomplete or maybe even politically sensitive. Let's just zoom in on that reporting boundary issue for a second, because it's a really big one. GRI is crystal clear on this. Your responsibility for an impact isn't just about whether you legally own something. No, it's about your influence, your leverage, your connection to that impact. So many people get tripped up by this distinction. Another huge point of confusion is how GRI is different from other frameworks out there. This table makes the distinction so clear. GRI is all about the organization's impacts on the world. That's a stakeholder focus. Other frameworks, like ISSB, are more focused on the financial risks to the organization. That's an investor focus. Keeping these two different lenses separate in your mind is absolutely critical for the exam.
So what about that third trap? Imperfect data. The exam might give you a scenario where you just don't have all the numbers. The wrong answer is to just leave it out. The correct GRI approach is to be transparent. You disclose what you know, and then you explain the limitations, the assumptions, the uncertainties. Remember, credibility comes from transparency, not from pretending you have perfect data.
All right, we've covered the mindset, we've covered the common traps. So how do you actually turn all of this into a study plan that works?
let's break down how to prepare like a pro.
First things first, forget flashcards. Your prep needs to mirror the actual exam, so treat every single practice question like it's a mini case study. Don't just rush to find the answer. Then, get your hands on real-world GRI reports and pick apart their logic. As you're reading, you need to constantly stress test their decisions in your head, and always, always, always come back to that one ultimate question. Is this defensible?
And you know what? It all comes down to this one single idea. Your number one goal in every single exam question and in every real-world scenario you'll ever face is defensibility. If you can justify your decision using the principles of the GRI standards, you are golden.
This final quote really just sums up why this all matters so much. The world doesn't need more report writers. It needs credible professionals who can navigate all this complexity and make tough, defensible calls. That's the real value of this certification. So, I'll leave you with this one question, because it really does sum everything up. As you're preparing, just ask yourself, are you studying to be a test taker, or are you training to be a credible sustainability professional? Because the mindset you choose is going to make all the difference. Good luck.